Elon Musk's new AI demands a staggering 2 gigawatts of electricity, enough to power nearly 2 million homes. So, why is BlackRock quietly buying up your power grid? To feed this new era of computing, the world's largest asset manager is systematically taking the public utilities that power your home private. This isn't a corporate war. It is a synchronized restructuring of the most vital asset of the 21st century. The story being told publicly about artificial intelligence is one of pure progress. Better tools, faster answers, machines that help doctors diagnose cancer, help students learn faster, and help businesses serve customers around the clock. That story is not wrong, but there is a parallel story happening right now in real neighborhoods, in real regulatory hearings, in real utility bills, that almost nobody is telling clearly. AI does not run on code alone. It runs on electricity. Vast, uninterrupted, industrial-scale electricity that has to come from somewhere. From someone's grid, someone's community, someone's backyard. Today, Gated gets inside the two most powerful forces racing to control that electricity, and what their race means for the infrastructure of the modern world. In June 2024, Elon Musk's AI company, xAI, took over a former appliance factory in South Memphis, Tennessee. He called it the Gigafactory of Compute. Its real name is Colossus. By January 2026, Colossus had expanded to an unprecedented scale, housing 555,000 NVIDIA GPUs purchased for approximately $18 billion. It stands as the world's largest single-site AI training installation, the machine responsible for training Grok, xAI's chatbot, which now commands over 100 million users. But the sheer speed of this build-out required a logistical compromise. To power Colossus immediately, xAI installed 35 methane-powered gas turbines on site. While initially permitted for 15, the company operated an additional 20 turbines without standard air permits, bypassing the typical windows for public notice, environmental review, or community input. The surrounding Memphis area already faced significant environmental headwinds, frequently ranking high on national asthma indexes. The sudden introduction of large-scale, localized fossil fuel generation quickly drew federal scrutiny. The EPA ultimately determined that xAI's natural gas generators were operating in violation of the Clean Air Act, rejecting the company's argument that the turbines should be exempt as temporary infrastructure. Despite lawsuits from organizations like the NAACP, and Earth Justice, alongside a Senate investigation launched by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, the physical footprint of the project only expanded. By early 2026, the playbook was duplicated just across the state border. In South Haven, Mississippi, construction began on Colossus 2. According to federal legal filings, xAI moved forward with installing 27 additional unpermitted gas turbines at the Mississippi site, once again prioritizing processing speed over local regulatory timelines. To understand how a single entity can move this fast, bypassing the traditional bureaucratic guardrails that govern public infrastructure, you have to understand the fundamental operational philosophy of Elon Musk. He does not view regulatory frameworks as fixed laws. He views them as recommendations to be optimized. While Musk was rapidly deploying localized generation assets in the South, the world's largest asset manager was executing a much larger, quieter, and more systematic strategy to control the macro infrastructure powering the entire artificial intelligence sector. BlackRock manages over $11 trillion in assets, a financial footprint larger than the gross domestic product of nearly every nation on Earth, save for the United States and China. In January 2024, BlackRock announced a definitive $12.5 billion acquisition of Global Infrastructure Partners, or GIP. The merger created an infrastructure powerhouse managing approximately $170 billion in direct physical assets, backed by a global team specialized in complex logistics. GIP was not a traditional Wall Street stock trading firm. It was an operational machine staffed by engineers, regulatory lawyers, and energy sector dealmakers who spent decades managing physical power grids, airports, ports, and pipelines. They possessed the exact operational expertise required to directly manage and operate physical public utilities. Despite objections from consumer advocacy groups raising concerns over corporate consolidation in the energy sector, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approved the acquisition. With GIP integrated into its ecosystem, BlackRock shifted from merely owning financial shares to directly owning the physical grid itself. By October 2025, the true scale of this strategy became apparent. A massive consortium, anchored by BlackRock's global infrastructure partners, acquired Aligned data centers for $40 billion, marking the largest data center transaction in history. Aligned controlled over 50 data center campuses, holding a staggering 5 gigawatts of priority allocated grid capacity across critical tech corridors in Northern Virginia, Chicago, Dallas, Ohio, and Phoenix. The structural architecture BlackRock built around this transaction is uniquely designed to monopolize the pipeline. They formed an exclusive vehicle called the AI Infrastructure Partnership, or AIP. Founded by BlackRock, GIP, Microsoft, and MGX, the partnership later brought in NVIDIA to secure the chip supply, while sovereign wealth giants like the Kuwait Investment Authority and Singapore's Temasek stepped in as foundational capital anchors. The result is a perfectly closed ecosystem. BlackRock owns the physical infrastructure, NVIDIA dictates the hardware, enterprise tech firms sign the long-term leases that guarantee steady revenue, and sovereign wealth protects the entire apparatus from the volatility of public stock markets. The consortium's framework is built to mobilize up to $100 billion in total capital. It ensures that those inside the gates capture compounding institutional returns, while the public consumer interacts with the infrastructure purely as a retail ratepayer. Securing the data centers was merely the opening phase. To truly control the economics of AI infrastructure, BlackRock needed to move further upstream, directly into the regulated public utility companies that dictate energy distribution. In May 2024, BlackRock's GIP announced a $6.2 billion agreement to acquire Elite Inc., the parent company of Minnesota Power, which serves over 150,000 residential and industrial customers. As a regulated utility, Minnesota Power was traditionally bound by strict public transparency, rate-setting accountability, and citizen oversight. The transaction faced immediate friction. An administrative law judge issued an extensive report explicitly recommending that the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission reject the takeover, concluding that the private equity buyout did not serve the public interest. The judge's formal findings warned that the acquisition structure would introduce an unacceptable risk of rate shock, stating that GIP's internal framework was designed to pursue profit in excess of public markets through company control. The Minnesota Attorney General, the Sierra Club, and local manufacturing groups all aligned against the deal. Yet, by late 2025, the Public Utilities Commission voted to approve the acquisition anyway, bypassing the judicial warnings in exchange for temporary, short-term rate caps. A public asset designed for citizen reliability was transformed into a private asset calibrated for institutional yield. The expansion continued systematically. In March 2026, a consortium led by BlackRock's GIP and EQT Infrastructure entered a definitive agreement to take the AES Corporation private in an all-cash transaction valued at $33.4 billion. AES controls critical regulated electric utilities, serving millions of customers across Indiana and Ohio, alongside a massive global energy generation portfolio. The internal targets for BlackRock's infrastructure funds aim for gross annual returns between 15 and 20%. To contextualize that figure, publicly traded U.S. utilities have historically generated average returns of roughly 11% over the past decade. The structural gap between what private capital expects to earn and what public infrastructure traditionally costs is ultimately balanced on the back of the local ratepayer. As Indiana State Representative Cherish Pryor observed during the acquisition proceedings, for years, AES customers have battled skyrocketing prices and declining service. Selling to private equity will only make it worse. This intersection of computing and power distribution has forced a dramatic, unspoken pivot from the highest echelons of global finance. For nearly a decade, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink was the world's most vocal proponent of environmental, social, and governance standards, famously using his annual letters to warn corporate boards that climate risk is investment risk. He positioned BlackRock as the primary institutional force driving the global green transition, utilizing immense voting blocks to pressure public corporations to accelerate the retirement of fossil fuel assets. Then, the compute requirements of artificial intelligence materialized. In his recent corporate communications, Fink dropped the phrase ESG entirely, replacing it with a new directive, energy pragmatism. He argued publicly that the realities of deep compute deployment would require extending the operational lifespan of traditional fossil fuel assets, acknowledging a stark shift from his previous climate positions. Through the acquisition of public utilities like Minnesota Power, BlackRock now directly controls over 820 megawatts of active coal-fired power generation. The institutional apparatus that spent years demanding rapid decarbonization has emerged as a major private holder of traditional, carbon-heavy infrastructure. The calculation is simple. The AI rollout cannot wait for a clean energy grid to mature at a traditional regulatory pace. To secure the compounding returns of the technology boom, institutional capital is purchasing the grid precisely as it stands today. Coal plants, natural gas networks, and all. While mainstream coverage often treats Elon Musk's industrial scale-up and Wall Street's utility acquisitions as completely separate narratives, the financial reality reveals that they are deeply integrated partners. Musk's xAI is a formal participant alongside BlackRock, GIP, and Microsoft inside the AI infrastructure partnership. Musk is simultaneously acting as the high-volume consumer, deploying unpermitted infrastructure in the South, while partnering directly with the financial consortium, purchasing the public utilities that anchor the Midwest grid. The depth of this network is laid bare in the financial disclosures of SpaceX's highly anticipated S-1 prospectus. The filings exposed a massive, related party transaction, a $20 billion infrastructure and computing lease agreement between Musk's xAI and Valor Equity Partners. Crucially, the corporate entity legally guaranteeing those multi-billion-dollar lease obligations is SpaceX itself. The architect of Valor Equity Partners is Antonio Gratias, a longtime member of Musk's inner circle, an early SpaceX board member, and the individual who provided the ultimate financial lifeline of $1 million to Musk's empire. Now, those exact same institutional relationships are reassembling to lock down the power grid. The private equity pioneers who funded the dawn of commercial spaceflight are partnering with the world's largest asset manager to buy up the underlying public utilities that make advanced computing physically possible. This is not a chaotic clash of corporate rivals. It is a highly coordinated, multi-layered business strategy operating entirely within the boundaries of private law, executed at a level of infrastructure where the general public has no voting mechanism. The world is focused entirely on the evolution of the software. The most permanent changes are occurring in the physical infrastructure underneath it. This is gated. The next door opens soon.